Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wal aqibatu lil muttaqeen wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulih nabiyil ummi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. قال الإمام ابن رجب الحنبلي رحمه الله تعالى: ونفعنا الله بعلومه في الدارين. قال: My dear respected brothers and elders, this is chapter 9. And just to remind everyone, this entire work surrounds around the same hadith, one hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Abdullah bin Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, where he advised him. So we've done so far, ihfadillah yahfadka, be mindful of Allah and Allah will be mindful of you. What that meant. وَإِذَا سَأَلْتَ فَاسْأَلِ اللَّهِ, when you ask Allah. When you need assistance, ask Allah. And in yesterday's dars, the part of the hadith that harm and good is only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In today's dars, chapter 9, know that much good comes from patience in the face of what you dislike. Know that much good comes from patience in the face of what you dislike. We have a very misconstrued and misunderstanding of what patience is. Patience doesn't mean you don't do anything. And sometimes somebody comes for advice and they ask, what should we do? We say, sabr karo. Yeah, what to kar rahe ho? That we're doing. Tell us something else. You know. So they take patience as something which means you're helpless and you can't do anything. No. In fact, it's the total opposite. Because when you are patient, what are you doing? You are in fact creating a resilience within inside yourself. This capability within inside yourself to stand firm in the face of hardship. You are building an internal quality. You know, when a person goes to the gym and they do press-ups and they pick up different weights, do they feel like they're wasting their time? No, they feel like they're building muscle, they're building physical vigor, the physicality is getting better. So when you are doing patience, this is a spiritual gym. You are building your spiritual resilience, your spiritual power of standing firm and standing positive in the time of adversity and trouble. We're living in a time of sensitivity. People are very sensitive. Small things trigger them. Small argument between husband and wife, small arguments between family members, it turns into a complete full-blown war because people cannot control themselves. So when you are exercising patience and you are learning how to control yourself, you are building this internal, invaluable quality. Subhanallah. And not only are you building a quality, you are also closing your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes. So we need to understand that sabr is not just you're not doing anything. And if you are able to do this, as the Quran says, وَإِن تَصْبِرُوا وَتَتَّقُوا لَا يَضُرُّكُمْ كَيْدُهُمْ شَيْئًا. If you exercise patience and you adopt piety, لَا يَضُرُّكُمْ شَيْئًا. لَا يَضُرُّكُمْ كَيْدُهُمْ شَيْئًا. Their plans and plots, their harms and their schemes of the enemy, whether that enemy be internal or external, cannot you do any harm. They can't you do any harm. No harm can come to you if you exercise patience, inshallah. So patience is a very big thing. Although we should not ask for patience, we shouldn't ask Allah for sabr. Why? Because that means you will go through a calamity. We should ask for afiyah. As we mentioned in the previous dars, we should always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for afiyah. Afiyah means protection from internal and external calamities. However, if a calamity does befall, then we should exercise patience. In the narration of Umar radiallahu ta'ala not Umar radiallahu ta'ala, Umar the freed slave of Ghafar ibn Abbas radiallahu an, there is an addition before these words which says, carry on doing deeds for Allah with certainty and satisfaction. Carry on doing deeds for Allah with certainty and satisfaction if you can manage it. But if you are not able to do so, then indeed there is much good that comes from patience in the face of what you dislike. Much good comes. Sometimes you don't see it straight away, but because of your patience, on the long term you see very good results. Yes. And especially with family members, my dear brothers. Family members, that is one of the most difficult patients, because family members are close, relatives are close, you have this strong bond and they're causing harm to you, they're causing problems to you. You want to take revenge, you want to do something. However, you are patient. In long term, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you a better result. Yes, you will be in a better position, inshallah. The meaning of yaqeen, Jangir, you asked yesterday, yaqeen. It's coming, Ibn Rajab mentioning now. The meaning of yaqeen, certainty here, is firm belief in predestined fate, as it mentioned explicitly in the narration of Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma's son, Ali ibn Abdullah ibn Abbas, who relates from him, although with a weak chain of narration. Yes, although with a look, Ibn Rajab rahmatullahi alayhi is mentioning here that this hadith, even though it is weak in its chain, but he's still using this. Why? Because according to the ulama, in fact there's a consensus, as Imam Nawawi mentioned, that when it comes to fada'il, virtue, yes, targhib and tarheeb, using weak narrations is valid. Using weak narrations is, because there's a trend now, unfortunately, those people who say we only follow hadith, they say weak hadith, we reject the weak hadith. Hum nahi mante bhai. No. Yes, of course, you cannot use weak hadith when it comes to aqaid. You cannot use weak hadith when it comes to ahkam. When it comes to fadail, you can use weak hadith.
So you're saying Imam Ibn Hanbali is saying that's okay?
Yes. But with obviously certain conditions. With certain conditions. The point is, weak hadith is not completely rejected, it's not mawdu'. It is not fabricated. And Imam Bukhari rahmatullah alayhi, his compilation of his Sahih, Al-Jami' Al-Musnad Al-Mukhtasar, or Al-Jami' Al-Sahih Al-Mukhtasar, the title Sahih in there, he made a stipulation that he's only going to include weak hadith, authentic hadith. This doesn't mean that Imam Bukhari did not accept weak hadith. Why? Because Imam Bukhari has got another book, Al-Adab Al-Mufrad. Imam Muhammad bin Ismail al-Bukhari rahimahullah, he has another book, it's called Al-Adab Al-Mufrad, which is an akhlaqiyat, Islamic mannerism. Approximately 1/3 of this book is weak. 1/3, which means that even according to Imam Bukhari, when it comes to weak narrations, you are allowed to use weak narrations in the remit of fada'il, in the area of fada'il. I was starting you to say, what do you say to an old man in Arabic? Zaif. Yes? In Urdu, Zaif hai. Zaif. Old person. Does that mean we bury him? We don't bury him, he's still alive. Yes? He might not be able to play football with us. He might not be able to do construction with us, but he can do many other things. So, In the same way, weak hadith doesn't mean we get rejected. No, weak hadith means that you cannot use weak hadith in aqaid and ahkam. But when it comes to fadail, like Ibn Rajab Al Hanbali, he's using a weak narration. He's saying this is weak narration. However, he's still using it because it is maqbool, accepted when it comes to fadail. And this is the way of the ulama and the way of the pious salaf. In it is so the addition in this hadith is the Sahabi said, I said, Messenger of Allah, how should I deal with certainty? He sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, you should know that whatever befalls you was never going to pass you, and whatever passes you was never going to befall you. Whatever's benefit was going to happen, it was going to happen. Whatever harm was going to happen, it was going to happen. You would never be saved from this. Opening the door of certainty in preordained fate and determined destiny in the heart causes a person to feel satisfied with fate and destiny, putting his heart at peace with it. Subhanallah. One of the hikam and the wisdoms of taqdeer is that a believer heart is at peace. I mean, they say, okay, if everything is written, what benefit do you get? Well, the benefit that you get as a believer, you get satisfaction of the heart and peace that, look, if Allah has decided this, it will happen. I cannot stop this. But when you begin to believe that you are in control of your affairs, and then things go out of control, that's when you lose the plot. Yes or no? Have you seen those people who are extra control freak, or they micromanage everything? Yes? You get certain people who want to micromanage everything, making sure everything is to their will and their volition and their desire. As soon as something goes out of line, they lose it. Because they feel like they're not in control anymore. But the reality is you were never in control to start off with. Because everything has been written by who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what the Quran said. The Quran has pointed to this specific meaning in His words. لِكَيْ لَا تَأْسُوا عَلَى مَا فَاتَكُمْ وَلَا تَفْرَحُوا بِمَا آتَاكُمْ. That is so that you will not be grieved about the things that pass you, or rejoice about the things that come to you. What's the context of the verse? ما أصاب من مصيبة في الأرض إلا بإذن الله أو ما أصاب من مصيبة ولا في أنفسكم إلا في كتاب من قبل أن نبرأها إن ذلك على الله يسير لكي لا تأسوا على ما فاتكم. Allah said, whatever calamity befalls, this has already been written in the taqdeer of Allah. Yes? Allah says, أن نبرأها من قبل أن نبرأ. Before it even happens, we have written this down in the sacred tablet. لكي لا تأسوا على ما فاتكم. So you don't become grieved over something that you lose, or you don't become overly rejoiced over the things that you gain. Meaning, what does that mean? If you lose something, you won't be grieved. Why? Because it's already written. And if you gain something, you won't get overexcited and become arrogant. Down here, farah here is not just rejoicement, but a rejoicement with the level of arrogance. Pride. You shouldn't feel pride. Why? Because it was already written that you're going to get this. Ibn Abi Dunya has quoted that Dhahak explained this verse of the Quran. It means, console them so that you will not be grieved about the things that pass you by. Do not grieve about any matter of the world, since we have not destined it for you. Do not rejoice about anything that we have given to you from the world, since it was never going to be hidden from you. Whatever ni'mah and blessing that you've received, you're going to receive anyway. But then we notice, subhanAllah, taqdeer, it keeps a person grounded. It keeps a person grounded. Allahu Akbar. Ibn Abi Hatim relates that Sa'id ibn Jubayr, that the verse means so that you will not be grieved about well-being or abundance passing you by, since you know that was written for you before He created you. Because brothers, if you look at both scenarios, what happens if a person becomes overly grieved? What happens? They can lose hope. Yes? When a person becomes overly grieved, if the musibah is such that he was not expecting it. Sometimes, may Allah Ta'ala save us all, tragedies can happen. You could be driving in a motor with your family and crash, you all die. All your children. I had one friend, it was in my younger brother's class. He had 2 or 3 children in the back. on the motorway with him and his wife. They had an accident. Only him and his wife survived. All his 3 children died. This was just a couple of years ago. Allahu Akbar. But anything can happen. Anything. It takes a minute for your life to change upside down from a rejoiceful and career-driven, successful man to a loser. To a person who's ready to commit suicide now. Within a second. It only takes a few seconds. This is why, my dear brothers, we shouldn't ask again. We should always ask for afiyah. But our connection with Allah should be such that if a calamity does befall us, may Allah save us. We need to keep on asking for this dua because we're not in a position to ask for calamity. None of us are. Yes. And nor should we ask for calamity. But if a calamity does befall, a person doesn't lose hope completely because they know it is Allah. And conversely, if something big, mashallah, you got the best car that you've always dreamed of or something, then you don't become overly proud. Why? Because you know that this is blessing that was already written by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the early Muslims said something with a similar meaning. Belief in taqdeer, belief in fate removes grief and sorrow. Belief in fate removes grief and sorrow. I highlighted this, look. Here.
One of the things that I read on yaqeen, so you're saying have yaqeen in taqdeer, it says to have a favourable opinion of Allah. Allah is going to...
Yeah, of course. You should also have that too. Yes, you need to have a favourable opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the point is that whatever will happen with Allah's permission. The Prophet ﷺ indicates, this is very important, but this hadith is very important. The Prophet, and this happens to some of us, the Prophet ﷺ indicates this meaning in the authentic narration from him. احرص على ما ينفعك واستعن بالله ولا تعجز فإن أصابك شيء فلا تقل لو أني فعلت كذا ولكن قل قدر الله ما شاء وما فعل فإن كلمة لو تفتح عمل الشيطان أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. Desire what will benefit you, meaning what benefits you, do this, desire this. Seek Allah's assistance and do not lose heart. If something befalls you, do not say, if only I did this and that. If something happens, do not say, oh, if I did this, agar main ye karta, agar ye hota, if I did this, if I did this. No, don't say this. Why? Rather say Allah's divine decree and He does what He wills. Indeed, if, meaning the word if, only opens a person up to shaitan's doors, up to shaitan's exploits. This means that reminding oneself of preordained fate at times of difficulty removes the whispers of shaitan that cause grief, sorrow and regret for pursuing the means to try and prevent it from happening. Because if you say if, what will happen? Nothing's going to change and this will just open doors for shaitan to attack you. Then it will make you anxious. It will make you, think, overthink, start thinking things that you're not supposed to say, lose hope, become negative. All of something because it's not in your control now. So don't say if. Because when you start saying if, then you're making up an ideal scenario in your mind which is contrary to reality. Reality is khalas, is done. What's happened is happened. But now you're saying, agar main ye karta, if I did this, if I did that. You're just making things up now.
As you said, we've only got one pixel. Allah's got the full picture. So
yes.
Maybe.
Yes, we have just a pixel if that, and Allah has a complete picture. Imam Ahmad rahmatullahi alayhi quotes the narration with the following addition from Anas radiyallahu ta'ala. So Anas radiyallahu ta'ala says, خدمت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم 10 سنين فما قال لي شيء فعلته لما فعلت كذا وكذا ولا لشيء لم أفعله ألا فعلت كذا وكان إذا لامني بعض أهله قال دعه فلو قدر شيء كان الله أكبر. I served the Prophet alayhi, he's saying, Anas radiyallahu ta'ala saying, I served the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam for 10 years. Never did he say about a thing I did, why did you do such and such? Neither about a thing I did not do, have you not done such and such thing? He never said this to me in 10 years. If any of his family rebuked me, yani if any of the family members Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam told me off and Anas, why haven't you done this? The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, leave him. If something is destined, it will happen. Allahu Akbar. And the full narration of this is also in Bukhari. Anas radiyallahu ta'ala. And he was a small child that his mother Sulaim radiyallahu ta'ala anha gave him to the service of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And in there he says, Ma masastu dibajan wala hariran alyan min kafi Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I've never touched any silk more softer than the palm of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Wala shamamtu rahitan qat atyab min rahati Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I never smelled any fragrance more sweeter than the fragrance that used to come from the sweat of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. In fact, Qadi Iyad rahimahullah in his Shifa has mentioned that his mother, who was from the Maharim, she was from the blood relatives of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, she sat down once and the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was sleeping and his body began to sweat. So she had a qarura, like a jug tied. So Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam asked, "Oh Sulaim, what are you doing?" She said, "Ya Rasulullah, I'm gathering your sweat. Because the musk that we sell in Medina, the market of Medina, to make that extra fragrant, we put your sweat inside there." And in that narration he mentions the khadamtu Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that I did khidmah for the Prophet alayhi salam for 10 years. فَمَا قَالَ لِي قَطُّ uff. He never said uff to me. Brother, how are the akhlaq of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam? It is something unimaginable. And then this narration, in 10 years he never said, why did you do this if I was not supposed to, and vice versa. 10 years. Brothers, we have children, we have students, we have maybe people working for us. How is our approach? And you see what happens, in Pakistan and India, Bangladesh, in our countries. Naukaron ka kya hal hota hai? Those who work. Even I went to Pakistan, and I was shocked the way they swear at them. It's like normal. Mums and dads and sisters swear. Maa baap ki gali. Allahu Akbar. And then if you go to Saudi Arabia, you see how they treat our people. We treat each other like this. So you go to Saudi, they treat us like this. Yes? You see how they treat the workers there. But if a white man comes, yes sir. yes. And anything else? Anything else? Yes, please. La ilaha illallah. I'm not saying being rude with the non-Muslims, but with Muslims you should have extra akhlaq. Rahma'u baynahum. The Sahaba were merciful to one another. But we are so strict and harsh with one another, and then when it comes to non-Muslims, we mashallah. Even in car park down here, brothers complain that they don't listen to us. What badmashi karte hai, they drive in, they don't listen to those brothers who wear yellow jackets, they don't listen. But if it was a white place, and the Gora was stood there and had a ticket, he would have, I will lift the car for you, don't worry. I'll lift the car if you say it. But when our people say the same thing, may Allah grant us tawfiq. Look, akhlaq Prophet alayhi salatu was a big lesson for me, big lesson for all of us. 10 years, he was a khadim. 10 years, he didn't say uff in 10 years. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Tabarani and Hakim have quoted the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, dawa'un min tis'ina wa tis'ina da' aysaruha alham. Allahu Akbar. The words La hawla wa la quwwata, there is no strength, no power except by Allah. This word La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, this phrase, is a cure for 99 illnesses, the lightest of which is grief, worry. So the dhikr of La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, this is a cure for at least 99 illnesses, and the least of them is hum, worry, gham. Even both badi cheez hai, this is a big thing, worrying, anxiety. It eats a person up from inside. But if you do dhikr of this, inshallah, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, this will cure this. The realization of this phrase demands entrusting all matters to Allah. Nothing can be except what He wishes, and belief in that removes grief and sorrow. The Prophet ﷺ advised about saying, La tattahim Allah fi shay'in qadahu lak. Do not question Allah in anything He has destined for you. The Prophet ﷺ said in an authentic hadith, لا يقضي الله للمؤمن قضاء إلا كان خيرا له إن أصابته السراء شكر كان خيرا له وإن أصابته الضراء صبر كان خيرا له وليس ذلك إلا للمؤمن أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. Allah does not decree a matter for a believer except that it is good for him. If good comes to him, he is thankful, and that is good for him. If hardship befalls him, he is patient, and that is good for him, and that is good for him. This is not the case with anyone except a believer. Allahu Akbar. And only a believer has this. There's two scenarios. Either you are in a state of happiness, or you are in the state of sorrow. Either you are in good times or you are in bad times. There is no third scenario. In good times, if you are shakir and you are grateful to Allah, you will be rewarded. And in hard times and adversities, if you are patient, yes, you will also get rewarded. So in both circumstances, both scenarios, you will be rewarded. And this is only for a believer. And this believer doesn't have this, because they don't even believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This section is quite long, so we shall do it over a few days. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all tawfiq. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi. Subhanakallah wa bihamdika. Wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa